Welcome to week 5 of the NFL season. Week 4 definitely could have gone better, 8-8, but that's all part of it. It's still still 500, so I still feel okay about it. But a lot of crazy games this week, as always. I mean, that's just how the NFL season works. The parity is strong. The parity has never been stronger in this league. I mean, anybody can win any week. I mean, so far the biggest underdog of the week is one it's like 7-7. They've won every game. It's amazing to think that, but we're probably gonna get more crazy game this week. We got our first London game, unfortunately, and no more double dip Mondays as well. Because let's be honest, the double dipping on Monday night is stupid. If you're going to have 2 games on Monday night, have 1 game early so you can watch all the way through, then have the last game. There's no reason why you should have 2 games playing at once on a Monday night. It's the NFL. It's the NFL. There's no reason for that. But let me know what you think. And as always, we'll go through every game from start to finish, starting with the Thursday night game of the week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Atlanta Falcons had a last-minute field goal to beat the Saints on Sunday. Tampa Bay absolutely dominated Philly in every way. Now, if you're a Philly fan, that game should be very concerning to you. And if you're a Tampa Bay fan, you're like, well, okay, all things are right. After their first loss last week for Tampa Bay, they came back strong. Their defense was great. They have a great quarterback in Baker Mayfield. Chris Godwin is doing good. Mike Evans had a nice bounce-back game. Rashad White hasn't really done much, but Bucky Irving is trying to show that maybe, just maybe, he could be the future running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And their defense, like I said, was solid. Atlanta won, played a pretty decent game. Bijan Robinson feels like a concern to me. It is only 29 yards rushing against the Saints. I mean, there's just something wrong there. I thought the Atlanta Falcons' offensive line was supposed to be really good, and Bijan Robinson was supposed to have a breakout year. Now, it's still early. Sure enough, he can still get going eventually, but it's just like so far, he's had a couple of decent games, but nothing world-shattering. But is he finally going to break through? We'll see. Drake London is up and down. Kyle Pitts still had that 1 touchdown in the first week and really hasn't done much since, all things considered. Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney really have a nice streak going. I mean, if you can say anything, Darnell Mooney looks like the go-to wide receiver when Kirk Cousins needs it. And it's a Thursday night game. We'll see what happens. It's in Atlanta, but I'm going to go with the road team. Tampa Bay wins. Atlanta goes to 2-3. I think something like 23-20. I think 23-20 is a good score. I mean, from what we've seen so far this year, Thursday night games have been pretty low scoring for the most part. Other than that first game, both Thursday games this year have been pretty on the down low, pretty terrible. But it's a divisional game, so, and against 2 teams that look to really make a shot at the playoffs, so we'll see what happens. But I'm going to go with Tampa Bay in this one. And next we have the Jets and Minnesota in jolly old England at the dreaded 8:30 game on Sunday morning. Jets coming out that surprising loss to the Denver Broncos, and the Vikings with that near collapse against the Packers. Yes, I know, I sound like a salty Packer fan, but let's be honest. The Vikings nearly collapsed that game. You can't just play conservative and literally need to avoid an onside kick to win the game. I'm sorry. But anyway, Minnesota looks great. They're still missing a couple of key pieces, so they're still 4-0, and they still have Hawkinson to come back and a couple other players. The Jets have been pretty up and down. Their defense has been solid, but Aaron Rodgers, after having a great week against New England, shit the bed. Denver was able to lock down the wide receivers. Garrett Wilson has been incognito this year. He has not had a good game. He's looked anything but great. Mike Williams is starting to get some rapport with Aaron Rodgers, so that's good. Breece Hall still doing Breece Hall things, but not having a great year. It's just losing 9-10 to the Denver Broncos for the Jets seems really wrong. I mean, I thought the Jets had turned a corner and we're starting to really get going offensively. But then again, that's what happens when you play the New England Patriots. As good as the Patriots defense is, they can make any team look way better than what they actually are. Now, I'll probably go with Minnesota. As much as I want to think Aaron Rodgers can beat this Viking team, I'm going with Minnesota. They just have too much firepower. Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, while not having the best year, has been pretty solid for the most part. Their defense has been surprisingly good, although they gave up a lot of points to the Packers in the second half. I will go with Minnesota to win 24-17. But it should be a pretty close matchup, all things considered. But maybe Aaron Rodgers throws a game-ending interception. It's crazy that seems. The way Minnesota's been playing, I bet they can make that happen. Next, Carolina and Chicago. Another interesting game. Bears coming off that big win against the Rams last week. Carolina losing to Cincinnati, but having a somewhat decent performance, but they were ultimately shut down in the second half. Cincinnati really took it to them. Xavier Legette is gaining some rapport with Andy Dalton, so that's good for his case. The running game is still halfway decent. Hopefully Jonathan Brooks is able to return, because I think if Jonathan Brooks returns to that offense, it could really bring a new dimension. I mean, he's a Bijan Robinson type player. He can really turn the corner for the Carolina Panthers. Now Chicago, their running game came back. Caleb Williams didn't have the worst game in the world. Their defense was pretty solid, and in the end, they held the Rams in check largely for most of the game. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to begrudgingly go with the Bears. Carolina had that fluke win 2 weeks ago against the Raiders, but I don't see them beating the Bears. As inconsistent as the Bears' offense has been, I still think they should have enough, and that defense should be good enough to shut down Andy Dalton. And the Panthers, I will go with Chicago to win, let's say, 20-17. Should be a relatively close game, but I think the Bears just have a little bit more going for them. And revenge game between DJ Moore and Carolina, and maybe Caleb Williams shows up. Carolina shows like, look what you're missing. Look what you could have gotten had you just kept the first round pick. I just wonder what you could have done had you not traded everything for Bryce fucking Young. Yeah. Chicago wins in a close game. Baltimore and Cincinnati, an AFC North showdown. Baltimore coming off the big win against Buffalo. That was surprising. And Cincinnati with a big win over Carolina. Now, Baltimore's offensive line is starting to come around, although Mark Andrews still has no touchdowns yet, which I think is absolutely surprising. Derrick Henry has been all world. He showed that he still has plenty of juice left in him. The defense was solid and opportunistic last week against the Bills. But to be honest, the Bills largely shot themselves in the foot with their terrible game plan. Cincinnati with the big win. Joe Burrow has been pretty darn good this year, even though they're 1-3. Running game is coming around. Chase Brown, showing that he could be the real, legitimate number one running back in Cincinnati now. Zach Moss is still doing good things, but Chase Brown is emerging. He's emerging, and if Zach Moss is not careful, he could be replaced easily. Their defense for Cincinnati still isn't great, and I think it could totally be taken apart by Baltimore at this time. I think the thing for Baltimore that's really changing around is that I think Lamar Jackson is getting that he doesn't need to be the hero all the time. He doesn't need to throw 50 to 60 times a game. He can just let Derrick Henry carry a lot and, have really good games. Zay Flowers is slowly getting back in the good graces, it seems. Rashad Bateman's still out there getting a couple catches here and there. And they just have a great 1-2 combination running back between Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. They've been doing pretty darn well. Now, this is going to be a really close game. It's in Cincinnati, so maybe I should give it to Cincinnati, but I just don't know how good Cincinnati is because they finally won last week, but it was against Carolina. So how good is that game really? And Baltimore looked fucking impressive against the Buffalo Bills. So I will give it to Baltimore with the caveat that I think Cincinnati could really take this one, and Baltimore could be back to the drawing board once again. But I will go with Baltimore winning 27-24. It's going to be a really old school AFC North showdown with some shootout elements, of course. But whoever wins the ground game in this game is going to win. Also, the turnover battle is huge as well. But Baltimore just has that little bit more. Then Cincinnati is going to be 1-4, and it's going to be really hard to climb back in the playoff picture. It just really is. It's a really hard hole to climb out of. Yes, it's still plenty of early, but how many teams have we seen go from 1-4 to the playoffs, or 1-4 winning anything? Like, barely any. So, next. Miami and New England. Miami has been dreadful. Their offense has been non-existent since Tua has been out. New England is the same, and it seems like they're double downing on the stupid with continuing to throw out Jacoby Brissett out there. Like, I get it. You want to keep Drake May protected. You want him to learn on the job, but it doesn't pay when Drake May is a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. I mean, Jacoby Brissett is not impressive. I know, or my fellow YouTuber Barry McCockner has been saying this a lot too, but it's true. Jacoby Brissett is not that great of a quarterback. He's certainly not better than Drake May. Get Drake May out there. Yes, he's still going to take his bumps and bruises for sure behind that offensive line, but Drake May always has some pizzazz, some zazz, some future leanings for sure. He has a better arm, and I think he should be able to move in the pocket well enough. I mean, Jacoby Brissett makes enough good plays to keep in the graces of Jerod Mayo, but come on, Drake May is the better quarterback. He needs to be out there. I know they have nothing to play for this year, but learning on the job is way better than just sitting there. Not everybody can do the Jordan Love thing or the Aaron Rodgers thing where you just sit a guy for several years and they automatically become good. It's not how it works. You need to have a good system around it to actually make that happen. But Miami has not been good. Jalen Waddle still has no touchdowns. Tyreek Hill has been non-existent. Devon Achane, after that great week one, looks just terrible. What is going on with the Miami Dolphins offense? I mean, their defense is shit. They lost so many pieces. They're still reeling, hoping Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb come back. But at this point, what is there to come back to? This team is awful. They are just awful. This is a battle of two of the worst teams in the NFL. I will begrudgingly go with Miami to win 17-14. Yeah, it's going to be a low-scoring game just because both teams cannot move the ball consistently and efficiently. But if New England wins, boy, questions should be had for Miami. I know Mike McDaniel's not going anywhere, but if this team ends up going like 2-15, 3-14, Mike McDaniel has to have a really hot seat. Yes, I know a lot of the future rides on Tua Tagovailoa, but it's hard to really have a great future when, as good as Tua Tagovailoa can be, it's hard to have a really good future when you build your franchise on sand. That's what Tua feels like. He's so fragile. He's as fragile as they come, and I think they need to start looking for a new quarterback next year. I really do. I mean, yes, Tua's the big paid guy, but who knows if he's going to be able to continue at this pace in this league. It's really thrown his career into the cloud, into the ether, but boy, Miami has not been good, but I think they'll have just enough to win. Next, we have Cleveland Browns and the Washington Commanders. The Commies have been great. Cleveland has been pretty up and down. Their defense is still good, but their offense has been up and down every week. You don't know what you're going to get. And still, Deshaun Watson is he's just not impressive in the least. Again, legal issues aside, he just has not been a good quarterback. Let's not think about the legal issues. Just think about him as a quarterback. He has lost basically everything he had in Houston. He can't really throw deep. He has some decent throws here and there, but he just doesn't have a lot left, to be honest. Their offensive line is dropping like front wise. Jerome Ford is giving something, but not enough. Hopefully, for their sake, Bradley Chubb is able to come back in the next week or so. He's practicing again, so I doubt he's going to play this week. But if Bradley Chubb has anything left, not Bradley Chubb, Nick Chubb, if Nick Chubb has anything left, he'll be able to really help that team get going. But the offensive line has just been slandered with injuries left and right. Washington has been great. Jaden Daniels looking like the real offensive rookie of the year. Ryan Robinson Jr.'s have been great. Terry McLaurin is finally getting into stride. A couple others are out there. Their defense has not been great, but has been doing work. Their defensive line is getting some more push, which is nice because they have one of the really good offensive or defensive lines in the league. It's just that their secondary ain't so great. But I'm going to get this game to Washington just because Jaden Daniels has been firing on all cylinders. And yes, he hasn't had the biggest passing games, but he's been able to move with his legs, score with his legs. The run game is doing great. He has a couple really good wide receivers, and they're in first in the NFC East. So, who would have thought that the Washington Commies would be first in the NFC East after week 4? But I think their mojo's just going to keep going. I just don't really see any reason for Cleveland to win this game, but, maybe their defense can really get to Jaden Daniels. I think that's the really only way that Cleveland really wins. But in this one, it's going to be 24-14. It's just Cleveland's offense just isn't great, and Washington's offense has been firing on all cylinders. Next, Indy and Jacksonville. Now, for Indy, apparently the hip injury for Anthony Richardson is not that bad, but again, the way he plays, he's going to be subject to injuries like this for the rest of his career. Jonathan Taylor has been really good all year. He's had 4 really good games, and then he hurt his ankle. So hopefully for their sake, he's able to play. Michael Pittman had a really nice game last week, so hopefully he can get in there more. Their defense hasn't been solid, but they've been starting to get more pressure. Atu is starting to look why he was drafted in the top 15, and they've just been solid. They've been a solid team. They're 3-1. They're looking good. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that the Colts would be where they are right now? Again, still, their future is kind of shaky just because Anthony Richardson, while he has all the good tools in the world, he is an injury risk just because of the way he plays the game. But hopefully he's able to go. Although, if he can't go, Joe Flacco, again, showing that despite his age, he can still throw it. He can still make good plays, and he can still win your team games. So I really liked his addition of Joe Flacco for the Colts early in the season, because last season wasn't a fluke. I mean, he's not gonna set the world on fire, but he's a solid quarterback in the league. I mean, look, he's 40. He's like over 40 years old, and Bryce Young is like 20, 24, 25, and he looks like garbage. So, I mean, hey, who cares if you have an old quarterback like Joe Flacco? The old guys that have actually won something in this league still have something to offer. Now, Jacksonville, again, they lost that game. They had that game in the bag, but Houston came back, and now Jacksonville's 0-4. Questions need to be asked. Is Doug Peterson going to make it through the season? Who knows? And who knows about Trevor Lawrence? Trevor Lawrence still missing plays. He's still making mistakes, and he just doesn't look good. I mean, he just hasn't been good. The running game hasn't been consistent. The defense has not been consistent. Christian Kirk has been a solid wide receiver for Trevor Lawrence, but it's just not enough. Travis Etienne, where's the Travis Etienne of a couple years ago? Where is that? Where is that guy? We haven't seen him for a long time. We still need him to come back, but I think a lot of this rides upon the play of Jonathan Taylor. If Jonathan Taylor can play and do Jonathan Taylor things, the Colts are going to win. Anthony Richardson, whether it's Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco out there, I think both look better than Trevor Lawrence so far this year. And Indy wins 27-17. It is in Jacksonville, so there's the heat factor, and sometimes Indy has gone down to Jacksonville and gotten absolutely gobsmacked, but this Jacksonville team is just not good. They're not a good team. I'm glad my season predictions are kind of turning out so far as they were. I mean, not as good, because I originally picked them to finish third, and now they're looking like a solid fourth place finish. I mean, even Tennessee looks like they have more. Even Tennessee still looks like they can function more and win better than Jacksonville. But it's going to be a decent game for them early on, but Indy will pull away, as they should. Next. Buffalo and Houston, the game of the week, really. One of the games of the week. Buffalo coming up, getting the absolute beatdown to Baltimore because of the terrible play calling of Joe Brady. Houston survived, and they didn't look good for most of the game, although Nico Collins had a really good game. CJ Stroud I feel like he's kind of having a sophomore slump a little bit. And it's just like he's missing plays, he's having more interceptions. He still has Nico Collins to throw to. Tank Dell's been out, so that's definitely a loss. Stephon Diggs has had a pretty decent year, although, let's be honest, I still think he's a malcontent. And I still think the chances of this team pulling up because Stephon Diggs are pretty good. Their defense has been solid for the most part. The running game has been decent even without Joe Mixon. Well, I wouldn't say decent. Okay. They've been okay. Buffalo, I like Buffalo to have a big bounce back game. Josh Allen just couldn't get going. I mean, where Buffalo really fell apart last week was they got that last touchdown to open the third. It's 21-10. They're driving. They get the ball back, and then they run a trick play that totally blows up in their face. And then the momentum went out just like that. And that's the funny thing about the NFL. Momentum is huge. You need to stamp and take the momentum by the horns and ride it. Because if you lose it, it's gone. It's gone just like that. And then Derrick Henry just came back and ran it down their throat, and Buffalo never really got closer than that, although they really had a good shot after scoring the touchdown, getting a turnover on down, I believe it was like 3 hours, just a short drive. But Joe Brady needs to have a better game plan this week, and I think like couple teams have done before this year, quarterbacks like Josh Allen should be able to pick apart Houston secondary a little bit for the most part. I think Josh Allen has a nice bounce back game, maybe 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, some decent run on the ground. It's going to be a really close game. It's going to be high scoring. It's going to be a shootout for sure. I think Buffalo wins though in the end, 30-27. It is in Houston, so maybe that gives them the edge, but I just don't see Buffalo losing terribly back-to-back weeks. I think last week was a real wake-up call for Buffalo, and that their play calling needs to be much better than what it was. Whatever play calling he did in the first couple weeks just isn't going to work now. Joe Brady needs to change up and play to his strengths, play to Josh Allen, and they need to get back to the running game. What I've noticed last week, that they didn't really get the running game going at all. James Cook needs to be back into the playbook, or back into the game plan, and start with the run, and then really open the pass up with Josh Allen, killing the secondary. I think that's really how Buffalo's going to get back to where they need to be. But Buffalo wins 30-27, one of the best games of the week. Las Vegas and Denver. This is a toss-up. I honestly don't know who to pick. Denver has been surprising. They have 2 wins, even though, let's be honest, they were kind of fluke wins. Although the win against Tampa Bay was pretty impressive. Las Vegas has been pretty up and down. I mean, offensively, their running game is still like non-existent. Who knows what's going to happen with Devontae Adams? I heard he's going to be traded, but who knows? Zamir White, where's this preseason hype? It's just not there. Who knows if it'll ever get back? I know it hurts with their offensive line is missing pieces. Their defense was missing Max Crosby last week, and they still won. So make of that what you will, but I think I'm going to go with Las Vegas. Because you know why? Because every time I pick Denver to beat Las Vegas, the Raiders win. Every time. The Raiders are like 7-9 in the last 9 matchups against Denver. It's something crazy like that. Denver just doesn't beat the Raiders for some reason. I don't know why. And maybe Bo Nix just has a bad game and Las Vegas wins, but I'm just going to say it. For some reason, the Raiders are going to win. The Raiders are going to find some way to win because they always beat the Broncos now. They really do. Just look at the stats and look at the records. The Raiders have a really high winning percentage over the last 5 years against Denver, more than anyone probably would have thought. But it should be a relatively close game, maybe a low-scoring game, 17-14. But I think the Raiders find some way to pull it out because that's just what they've been doing lately. Arizona and San Francisco. Looking to be a decent game. Arizona didn't have the greatest game last week. San Francisco looking pretty darn good, although Brandon Ayuk still hasn't found his way to the end zone. And the big news this week, Christian McCaffrey has Achilles tendonitis in both legs. It really makes you think about his future. It really makes you think, is he gonna even come back this season at all? But Jordan Mason has done pretty darn good work. The offensive line is still really darn good. Jawan Jennings didn't have the greatest week last week, but he had a really nice catch deep down the ball at the end of the third quarter. Kicking has been reliable, and they've just been scoring. And it helps when you play a team like with the Patriots to really back to where you need to be. But I think San Francisco's going to win this game. I mean, Kyler Murray's been pretty good, but Arizona got pretty beat down by Washington last week. Marvin Harrison Jr. looks to be a good pick to maybe win Offensive Rookie of the Year. James Conner has been doing great work. He's still a reliable running back at nearly 30 years old. He's still one of the most reliable running backs you can have on your fantasy team on a week-to-week basis. But I think it's in San Francisco. I think it gives San Francisco the edge. I think the 49ers win 30-20. I think it'll be fairly close for most of the game, with San Francisco pulling away at the end, or Kyler Murray throwing a late game interception, something like that. But Kyler Murray has been pretty good this year. It's just San Francisco is just an overall better team, and they win 30-20. Next, the Giants in Seattle. Seattle coming off their first loss of the year. I told you in my previews last week that the Seattle Seahawks defense would be exposed and they would give up a lot of points, and they did. They gave up 42 points, and Goff threw a perfect game. He was 18 for 18, like 299 yards and 3 touchdowns, I believe. So yeah, Jared Goff really took the Seattle defense apart, and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs both had really good games as well. The Giants losing in the fashion that they did. Malik Neighbors going out with that concussion that the end of the game really took away any chance for them to really win at the end. And Daniel Jones just was not good last week. I mean, he was reasonably good. He completed a large portion of his passes, but the ones he missed were always underthrown, and guys were just diving to catch the balls, and they were missing left and right. It's back in Seattle, so I think Seattle comes back and wins in a big way. Geno Smith, while not the greatest quarterback in the world, has been doing good. Kenneth Walker came back in a big way this week. DK still doing DK things, and yes, he fumbled the ball away, and that's another thing that DK does from time to time, turn the ball over. But Seattle is going to have more than enough firepower to win. I anticipate Seattle winning 13-28. I just don't really see any chance for the Giants to win, especially if Malik Neighbors is unable to go. Then the Giants are really up a creek, and I think Seattle wins in a big way. Next, Dallas and Pittsburgh, one of the more intriguing games of the week. Dallas coming off that win against the Giants, even though they did not play very well. The Steelers coming back and nearly beating the Colts, but again, they didn't look really good at all that first half. Justin Fields looked more like the Justin Fields of Chicago, although they made a nice return. Hopefully for their sake, Jaylen Warren is able to return. It's a really nice 1-2 combination with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And when that's working, they're doing really good things. Their offensive line still has trouble in times. Their defense is still eating. TJ Watt is still a monster out there. George Pickens had a decent game, but in terms of fantasy numbers, he's pretty matchup dependent. They have a couple good pieces out there. But if their running game can continue to run and get going, Pittsburgh should be able to be just fine. But when Pittsburgh's running game is not doing well, their offense is not scoring. And that's a problem. And because they need to score, because as good as Fields has been, he's still kind of limited when it comes to it, and he needs a really good running game around him to really succeed. Dallas with the win, although you don't really feel that great about it because of that missed kick by Brandon Aubrey at the end, which still kind of feel led to believe that it was kind of thrown. CeeDee Lamb had a nice bounce back game last week. Dak Prescott had a nice game last week. Brandon Cooks they're still really the only other option besides CeeDee Lamb, although Jake Ferguson does give some good moments as well. Their running game still isn't that great. They don't have a lot of really good pieces on the running game, although Rico Dowdle had a couple of nice plays last week. But I still don't think Dallas is very good. Honestly, I think Pittsburgh wins. It's in Pittsburgh on a Sunday night. That defense should be able to get to Dak. And now, if Dallas's offensive line is able to power through like they have been, they should be fine. They should be able to win the game. But I think Pittsburgh's defensive firepower will overpower the Dallas Cowboys, and they'll win 24-21. Really close game. Maybe a late fumble, maybe a late turnover. I just think Pittsburgh, even though they're limited offensively, their defense should have more than enough to bring. And especially for the Dallas Cowboys, if Micah Parsons misses the game or anything, or they lose to Marcus Lawrence, I mean, they lost a couple of big pieces last week in the defense, so they're really going to need to bring in this week. But honestly, I think Pittsburgh has a nice bounce back win, and Dallas goes back down. But last but not least, KC versus New Orleans. Again, in this game, I'm picking Kansas City. It doesn't matter. Even when they lose Rashae Rice, they still find a way to win. The refs still bail them out. New Orleans, again, another bad game this week. Derek Carr, again, showing why you should never trust early season performances or great performances, because it's all fool's gold. He'll always lead you down the wrong path, and he'll always turn the ball over at the most inopportune times. And just with the kind of offense they have, Derek Carr should not be this up and down. He really shouldn't. They have good pieces on the receiving game. They do have a really nice running back in Alvin Kamara. Their offensive line, while not great, still can hold up to most defenses for the most part, but they just haven't been good the last couple of weeks, and I anticipate that continuing. Now, I think this should be a relatively close game because, like I said, Kansas City is dropping guys left and right. Rashae Rice probably out for the year. Travis Kelce still is incognito as far as I'm concerned. Kareem Hunt had a nice bounce back game, so I think Kansas City is going to really try and run him and keep that offense going. Patrick Mahomes has not been great for most of the year. He's up to like 5 interceptions already through 4 games. That's not great, but they still find a way to win. It's in Kansas City on a Monday night. I think Kansas City wins this, not handily, but handily enough. In this one, 31-21 is a reasonable score. I just don't think the Saints have enough to win. Plus, when you're playing against the refs and the Chiefs, it's really hard to really win the game. So, Kansas City wins, but again, they aren't going to look all that impressive. I mean, but they're just going to make enough ways to win. The refs are going to make enough calls to sway the game in their favor, and the Chiefs will end up 5-0. But that's the week. Those are my picks. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great day. Go Pack Go. And as always, God bless.